I am California of the past.
I am California of the past.
I
am California of the past.
My name is Marilyn Proffit, and I make things. I make two things that I think are special, or at least special to me. I make quilts that I never use anybody else's patterns, so I make my own design, and some are political. And I started folding books in 2006 on a whim. I was in a motel room in Mendocino. It was a very rainy night. My dog and I were shut in. I had a boring book. No, nothing is worse. So I had kind of thought about what you could do with a book sculpturally. And so I began to fold it, and it became a very entertaining thing. Next day I went to the used bookstore, and this became a project. So I started folding books and everything that I could think of, but I never cut a book. The book can always be unfolded and read. I have a great respect for the book. I started by binding books. I sprayed the books black and brown, and then I wrapped them with thread cord. And I was thinking of immigration issues and the difficulty of people with even the slightest hint of color, and the racial, which I think is still running rampant in this country in spite of having a president. So I felt that I called them bound by color, and so they were all black and brown, and they were bound. And then I thought I love window screen. I think it's just such an interesting medium, something to do things with. So I started doing things with thread and I thought the books, they maintain the integrity of the book, but using the cover, the title. The title of my book is The Erotic Silence of the American Wife, and I thought that this was kind of an erotic shape and a color that's kind of reminiscent of lingerie and things like that. So it's perfectly readable. The book is still there, but I altered the color. I started doing I made my first quilt in 1990. My husband had a heart transplant, and at that time, Stanford was very keen on keeping their chicks close to home. And so we were really tied to Stanford every day. So I thought this is an ideal time to make the quilt I've always wanted to make. Okay, I did a lot of other quilts too, but on the other hand, I did then when Bush rolled back the pollution laws, I became very angry with him. I thought I was very upset about this. So I started making environmental quilts. The first quilt I made was called The Skies Shall Darken, and the second one was And Rivers Shall Run with the Colors Unnatural. I had been sewing like 24/7. I had really focused on these quilts. I was getting it out of my system. And then he revoked and allowed more national forests to be exploited and logged. And I liked the Mendocino area very much and had walked a lot in the forest there. So I took with my dog, and we were up there and went to a favorite place. And then, of course, there were trees along the front and nothing behind. So I made a quilt called 7 Days in the Mendocino Forest. And the top row has got a whole row, lots of trees. The row below gets less trees and less and less and less. And this row is just stumps. That's the 7th day. But I have stitched very carefully all of these outlines so that there are ghost trees down here. I grew up in the Depression. Everybody did all those things. So you did everything for yourself. I was taught to do everything. I started sewing when I was barely holding a needle. I had an aunt who was a professional seamstress, and she taught me to sew. And I'm still doing it. Only now I don't sew for myself so much. Now I just make stuff.